the White Wolf's secret. For 5 years, she swallowed her pride, scrubbed blood from the frozen stone floors of the Ironhold Keep, and kept her inner beast leashed. They thought she was a broken, wolfless Omega. They were wrong. And when they finally forced her to shift, an entire kingdom fell to its knees. The winter of 1428 was unforgiving, burying the northern territories under 6 feet of snow and freezing the great river Ouse solid. Inside the towering, soot-stained walls of the Ironhold Pack, survival was the only religion. Here, weakness was a death sentence. And for Madeline Hayes, weakness was the only shield she had left. Madeline was 22, but her hands were calloused and scarred like a woman twice her age. She was classified as a null, a werewolf whose inner beast had failed to manifest by her 18th birthday. In the brutal hierarchy of medieval Lycan society, a null was lower than an Omega. They were laborers, punching bags, the invisible ghosts who hauled the firewood, emptied the chamber pots, and scrubbed the chainmail of the warriors. But Madeline was not a null. Deep within her, slumbering beneath a cage of sheer willpower and terror, lay an entity of ancient and catastrophic power. She harbored a white wolf. In the legends of the lycanthrope kingdoms, the white wolves were the Ethelgards, the sacred protectors of the moon goddess, born once every few centuries to balance the scales of power. They possessed speed that defied physics, strength that could shatter castle gates, and a healing bloodline coveted by every power-hungry alpha on the continent. 5 years ago, during the massacre of the Ivory Moon, the ruling monarch's father had hunted the last known white wolf to extinction. That wolf had been Madeline's mother, Lady Evelyn Hayes. Madeline, only 17 at the time, had hidden in the blood-soaked floorboards of their estate, watching the royal guard slaughter her family. From that night on, she buried her aura. She coated her scent in ash, pine needles, and stale ale. She broke her own fingers to avoid drawing attention in combat training. She became a ghost until the day the Crimson Crown came to Ironhold. The heavy oak gates of the fortress groaned open, and the ground trembled under the weight of 500 royal cavalrymen. At their center rode Alpha King Lucius Vane. Lucius was a terrifying figure, a man forged in the fires of war. At 28, he had conquered 3 neighboring territories, ruling his empire with an iron fist and a black wolf that was rumored to be the size of a war horse. He was notoriously ruthless, fiercely intelligent, and currently unwed. His royal tour was ostensibly a diplomatic mission to inspect the border packs, but whispers in the servant quarters suggested a darker motive. The king's seers had sensed a shift in the world's magic. They believed a remnant of the Ethelgard bloodline had survived. Madeline stood in the freezing courtyard alongside the other servants, her head bowed strictly to the icy cobblestones, her ragged woolen cloak pulled tight. The air grew thick, suffocating beneath the sheer pressure of Lucius's alpha aura. It felt like a physical weight pressing down on her spine. "Stand up straight, filth," hissed Lord Branford Harding, the alpha of Ironhold, as he paced the line of servants, ensuring his pack looked disciplined for the king. Branford was a cruel, petty man who took immense pleasure in tormenting his gnolls. King Lucius dismounted his massive destrier. His boots clicked against the stones. He wore armor of blackened steel, a heavy cloak of dire wolf fur draping his broad shoulders. As he walked past the ranks of Ironhold warriors, his piercing amber eyes scanned the crowd. He was a predator assessing a new hunting ground. Madeline's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Keep your eyes down," she ordered her inner beast. "Do not react. Do not breathe." Her wolf, usually a silent, curled-up presence in the back of her mind, stirred restlessly. The proximity of such a powerful alpha was pulling at her instincts. Lucius stopped. He was 10 paces away from Madeline. The wind shifted, blowing a harsh gust through the courtyard. Lucius tilted his head, his nostrils flaring slightly. A frown etched across his handsome, battle-scarred face. He took a step toward the servant line. "Lord Branford!" Lucius's voice was a low, resonant baritone that sent shivers down the spines of everyone present. "Your keep smells of wet dog and cheap iron. But beneath that," he took another step closer to Madeline, "there is something else." Branford rushed forward, his face pale. "Your Grace, I apologize. The servants have been cleaning the kennels." "Silence," Lucius commanded, not shouting, yet the sheer force of the word made Branford snap his jaws shut. The king stopped directly in front of Madeline. She could see the scuffed toes of his steel boots. She stopped breathing. Her hands, red and cracked from the cold, trembled against her skirts. "Look at me," Lucius ordered. Madeline slowly raised her head. For a fraction of a second, her guarded, dull brown eyes met his piercing amber ones. She forced a look of vacant terror onto her face, the perfect picture of a broken gnoll. Lucius stared at her, his gaze stripping away her defenses. He leaned in, his face mere inches from hers. He inhaled deeply, drawing in her scent. Madeline had bathed in cold river water and rubbed charcoal into her skin that very morning, but the king's senses were supernaturally sharp. "Ash," Lucius murmured, his voice dangerously soft. "Rot and frost." He stared into her eyes for a moment longer, a flicker of confusion crossing his features. Then, the mask of the ruthless king slammed back into place. He straightened up, turning his back on her. "Prepare the great hall," Lucius announced to the courtyard. "Tonight we feast, and tomorrow every member of this pack will be tested. I am looking for something, Branford, and I will burn this fortress to the ground to find it." Madeline lowered her head, closing her eyes as a cold sweat broke out across her back. The king was hunting, and the trap was already closing around her. The great hall of Ironhold was a cavernous room of rough-hewn stone, illuminated by roaring hearths and hundreds of tallow candles. The air was thick with the smell of roasted boar, spiced wine, and the heavy, musky scent of over 200 werewolves trying to assert their dominance. Madeline navigated the crowded room with practiced invisibility, carrying a heavy silver pitcher of wine. Her muscles ached, and her nerves were frayed to the breaking point. The king's decree had sent a wave of panic through the lower ranks. Tomorrow, the rite of revealing would take place. A brutal magical examination that would force any hidden wolf to the surface. Madeline knew she could not survive it. She had planned to flee tonight under the cover of the blizzard raging outside, but the castle was locked down. Royal guards watched every exit. "Watch your step, beggar," a cruel voice sneered. Madeline narrowly avoided colliding with Lady Katerina Belmont. Katerina was the daughter of Ironhold's Beta, a striking woman with raven hair and a vicious streak. She was draped in crimson silk, aggressively trying to catch the king's eye, who sat bored and imposing at the high table. Katerina despised Madeline. Years ago, Katerina's older brother, Gideon, had cornered Madeline in the stables with dark intentions. Madeline's wolf had surfaced for a split second, snapping Gideon's arm like a twig. Madeline had blamed a spooked horse, but Katerina had always harbored a poisonous suspicion. "My apologies, Lady Katerina," Madeline murmured, keeping her eyes glued to the floorboards. Katerina sneered, her eyes glinting with malice. "The king commands his chalice be refilled. See that you don't embarrass us, Null." As Madeline walked past, Katerina casually stuck out the toe of her velvet slipper. Madeline, exhausted and distracted by the oppressive weight of Lucius's gaze from the high table, caught her foot. She pitched forward. The heavy silver pitcher slipped from her grasp, crashing onto the stone floor and sending a spray of dark red wine directly onto the armor of Commander Leonidas, the king's personal guard. The great hall fell dead silent. The music stopped. Every eye turned to the spilled wine, which looked damningly like blood on the commander's pristine armor. "You clumsy, worthless wretch!" Katerina shrieked, stepping forward and striking Madeline across the face. The slap echoed like a whip crack. Madeline tasted copper on her tongue. She fell to her knees, immediately adopting the submissive posture expected of her. "Forgive me," Madeline choked out, keeping her inner wolf, which was currently snarling and throwing itself against its mental cage, tightly locked away. "Hold it back, hold it back." Lord Branford stood up from the high table, his face purple with rage. "Guards, drag this useless filth to the courtyard. 50 lashes. Let her freeze." "Wait." The single word cut through the tension like a broadsword. King Lucius slowly rose from his carved wooden throne. He descended the steps from the dais, his eyes locked onto Madeline's kneeling form. The crowd parted for him, as if he were a god of war. Lucius stood over her. He looked at the spilled wine, at Katerina's smug face, and finally, down at the red welt blooming on Madeline's pale cheek. 50 lashes will kill a Null," Lucius said softly. "Is this how Ironhold treats its weakest?" Branford stammered. "Your Grace, she insulted your commander. She is a blight on my pack. She has no wolf, no honor." "No wolf?" Katerina interrupted, stepping closer, her voice dripping with venom. "I am not so sure, Your Grace. This servant is a liar. She heals too quickly from her beatings. She survives winters that kill strong men. I say she is a rogue, hiding her scent with witchcraft." A murmur of shock rippled through the hall. Witchcraft was heresy. Lucius's eyes darkened. He looked down at Madeline, who was trembling now, not from fear of the whip, but from the terrifying proximity of the Alpha King. His aura was screaming at her to submit, but her white wolf was screaming back, demanding she rise and bare her throat. "Is this true, servant?" Lucius asked. "No, Your Grace," Madeline whispered, keeping her head bowed. "I am nothing." Katerina smiled, a cold, triumphant expression. "Then you will not mind proving it. The trial of the moon, Your Grace, here, now. If she is truly a null, the silver will merely burn her skin. If she hides a beast, it will fight the poison. It will force a shift." Branford gasped. "Lady Katerina, the trial of the moon requires pure liquid silver and concentrated wolfsbane. It is agonizing. It is usually reserved for traitors. Are you questioning the security of the king, Alpha Branford?" Katerina countered smoothly. Lucius did not look at Katerina. His gaze remained fixed on Madeline. He felt a strange, inexplicable pull toward this bruised, ragged servant. His own black wolf was pacing restlessly in his mind, growling, agitated by her presence. "Bring the chalice," Lucius ordered. The hall erupted in hushed, panicked whispers. 2 royal guards hauled Madeline to her feet, dragging her to the center of the room. She didn't struggle. She couldn't. If she fought them, she would expose her strength. An old pack shaman stepped forward, carrying a small, smoking iron crucible. Inside bubbled a mixture of melted silver and crushed purple wolfsbane. The smell alone made the werewolves in the front row take a step back, gagging. "Drink," Lucius commanded. He stood only a few feet away, watching her every micro-expression. Madeline looked at the smoking crucible. If she drank it, the silver would attack her bloodstream. Her white wolf, immensely powerful and fiercely protective, would not allow its host to die. It would force a transformation to purge the poison. 5 years of hiding, 5 years of torture and silence, all ending here on the cold stone floor of Ironhold. "Drink it, witch," Katerina spat. Madeline looked up. For the first time, she dropped the facade. She didn't look at Katerina, or Branford, or the guards. She looked directly into the amber eyes of King Lucius Vane. The veil of the terrified, broken servant vanished. In her eyes, Lucius saw a flash of ancient, frozen defiance. It hit him like a physical blow. A guard grabbed Madeline's jaw, forcing her mouth open, and the shaman poured the scorching liquid down her throat. The pain was absolute. It felt as though swallowing a river of molten glass. Madeline screamed, a raw, tearing sound that echoed off the vaulted ceilings. She collapsed to the floor, convulsing. Her blood turned to fire. The silver tore through her veins, hunting her magic. "No," she screamed in her mind, fighting her own beast. "Stay hidden. Let me die." But the white wolf had endured enough. A sickening crack echoed through the silent hall as Madeline's spine snapped, reshaping itself. The crowd gasped, stumbling backward. "Impossible," Branford whispered. "Guards, draw your weapons," Commander Leonidas roared. Madeline's screams morphed into a deep, guttural, earth-shaking snarl. The ragged servant clothes ripped away as her bones extended and her muscles swelled. The transformation of a normal werewolf took a full minute and was shrouded in shadows. Madeline's transformation took seconds, accompanied by a blinding burst of pure, luminescent white magic that shattered the tallow candles and blew out the roaring hearths. The great hall was plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the radiant, ethereal glow emanating from the center of the room. When the light dimmed, Madeline Hayes was gone. In her place stood a creature of myth. The white wolf was enormous, easily standing chest high to a grown man. Her fur was the color of fresh, untouched snow, gleaming with an otherworldly light. Her eyes, no longer dull brown, were blazing pools of liquid silver. She shook her massive head, purging the remaining silver poison from her system with a terrifying, rumbling growl that vibrated through the very foundations of the castle. Panic erupted. Swords were drawn. Katerina Belmont screamed and scrambled backward, tripping over her velvet gown. The white wolf turned her massive silver eyes toward the high table. She locked eyes with King Lucius. Lucius Vane, the ruthless conqueror, the alpha of alphas, did not draw his sword. He stood frozen, his amber eyes wide with absolute shock, reverence, and a sudden, undeniable possessiveness. His inner black beast roared in triumph, recognizing what no one else in the room fully understood yet. The white wolf bared her diamond-sharp fangs, her aura exploding outward, a wave of pure, dominant, crushing power that swept over the room. Every werewolf in the Great Hall, from the lowest Omega to the cruel Alpha Branford, felt their knees buckle. Against their will, forced down by the sheer ancient weight of the Ethelgard bloodline, they collapsed to the stone floor in absolute submission. Only King Lucius remained standing. And as the white wolf took a slow, menacing step toward him, the real game began. The great hall of Ironhold remained entombed in a suffocating silence, save for the low, rhythmic growl rumbling from the chest of the white wolf. Madeline's silver eyes remained locked on King Lucius Vane. To everyone else in the cavernous room, she was a monster of legend, a nightmare wrapped in blinding snow-white fur. To Lucius, she was the missing piece of his soul. The scent of her, previously masked by ash, rot, and cheap ale, now flooded the massive room. It was the intoxicating aroma of winter pine, crisp midnight air, and blooming night jasmine. It hit Lucius's senses like a physical shockwave. His inner beast, the monstrous black wolf that terrified entire armies, did not want to dominate the creature before him. It wanted to bow. It wanted to claim, mate. The ancient word echoed through Lucius's mind, drowning out the ambient panic and fear of the hall. Kill it! Lord Branford's voice shattered the spell. The Alpha of Ironhold had managed to push himself up on one knee, his face twisted in a mask of absolute terror and undeniable greed. He recognized the Ethelgard. He knew what her pelt, her blood, and her magic were worth on the black market. "Guards! She is an abomination! Bring her down!" Before the Ironhold soldiers could even twitch their weapons, Lucius moved. He did not shift, but the sheer velocity of his movement blurred the air. In a heartbeat, the Alpha King stood directly between the White Wolf and the rest of the hall. He drew his broadsword, Nightfall, the blackened steel singing a deadly metallic note as it cleared the scabbard. The first man who takes a step forward, Lucius's voice was a lethal whisper that somehow carried to the furthest corners of the stone keep. Will lose his head. The second will lose his entire bloodline. Commander Leonidas and the royal cavalry instantly drew their weapons, forming an impenetrable perimeter around the king and the White Wolf. The Ironhold guards froze, dropping their halberds and swords to the floor, completely cowed by the overwhelming royal force. Katerina Belmont, still sprawled on the floor, pointed a trembling finger at Madeline. Your Grace, you cannot protect her. She is the last of the Hayes line. My father, Lord Nathaniel Belmont, proved they were traitors. They caused the massacre of the Ivory Moon. She is a danger to the crown. The White Wolf unleashed a deafening roar. The sheer force of the sound shattered the remaining glass in the high windows. Madeline's mind was a vortex of ancient rage. Katerina's father hadn't proved her family were traitors. Nathaniel Belmont had orchestrated the massacre himself, paying assassins to slaughter her parents so he could steal their land and mine the silver beneath their estate. Madeline lunged. She moved faster than a striking viper, bypassing Lucius and pinning Katerina to the freezing cobblestones. Her massive silver jaws snapped open, hovering mere inches from Katerina's exposed throat. The cruel woman sobbed, paralyzed by the sheer, crushing dominance of the Ethelgard's aura. Madeline! The name left Lucius's lips as a tender, grounding command. He did not use his alpha tone. He spoke to her as an equal. He approached slowly, lowering his sword. Madeline, look at me, Lucius commanded gently. The White Wolf snapped her massive head toward him, her lips still pulled back over lethal fangs. But as she met his amber eyes, the blinding fury began to recede. Lucius reached out a heavily scarred hand. The royal guards gasped, expecting the beast to tear his arm from its socket. Instead, Lucius rested his bare palm against her snowy snout. A jolt of pure, crackling electricity sparked between them, confirming the fated bond. You are safe now, Lucius murmured, his thumb brushing through her luminous fur. No one will ever lay a hand on you again. I swear it upon my crown. The fight drained out of Madeline. The silver poison had forced the shift, but maintaining this form required massive reserves of energy she simply did not possess after 5 years of starvation, physical labor, and abuse. Her massive frame shuddered. The blinding white light consumed her once more, shrinking, condensing, until the majestic wolf vanished into the ether. In her place lay Madeline, human once more, unconscious and curled out on the freezing stone. Before anyone could blink, Lucius tore off his heavy, fur-lined royal cloak and swept it over her bruised, shivering body, lifting her securely into his arms. He cradled her against his chest plate, his eyes blazing with a protective fury, that terrified the onlookers far more than the White Wolf had. "Commander Leonidas!" Lucius barked, turning his terrifying gaze upon Branford and the weeping Katerina. "Arrest Alpha Branford and the entirety of House Belmont. Seize their assets, their records, and lock them in their own dungeons. We leave for the capital at first light, and send word to the high clerics." Lucius looked down at the pale, exhausted face of the woman in his arms. "Tell them to prepare a coronation. I have found my queen." 3 weeks later, the brutal, unforgiving winter of the Northern Territories felt like a distant nightmare. Inside the gilded, sunlit chambers of the Sunfire Palace in the capital city of Oakhaven, Madeline stood before a massive floor-to-ceiling mirror. She barely recognized the reflection staring back at her. Gone was the hollow-cheeked, bruised servant of Ironhold. Her long, dark hair flowed in thick, lustrous waves, no longer matted with soot and ash. Her skin glowed with health, the scars of her past rapidly fading under the meticulous care of the royal healers and the immense restorative magic of her newly awakened Ethelgard Wolf. She wore a tailored gown of deep sapphire velvet, heavily embroidered with silver threads that matched the exact color of her wolf's eyes. "You look breathtaking," a deep, resonant voice rumbled from the arched doorway. Madeline turned to see King Lucius leaning against the frame. He wore formal regal attire, a tailored black tunic lined with silver, but his amber eyes still held the raw, possessive intensity of the wild alpha. Over the past 3 weeks, their bond had deepened from a shocking revelation into a fierce, unshakable partnership. Lucius had been ruthlessly patient, allowing her time to heal, to understand her new reality, and to accept the mating bond that pulsed constantly between them. "I feel like an imposter," Madeline admitted softly, her fingers tracing the intricate silver embroidery of her bodice. "A month ago, I was scrubbing chamber pots and hiding in shadows. Tonight, you expect me to sit beside you and pass judgment on the very lords who ordered my family's execution." Lucius crossed the room, his boots silent on the plush carpets. He stopped in front of her, gently taking her hands in his. "You were never an imposter, Madeline. They were. They stole your family's legacy, wrapped themselves in false nobility, and tried to bury you in the ashes. Tonight, you do not just pass judgment. You reclaim your birthright." The grand hall of the Sunfire Palace was a stark, magnificent contrast to the grim walls of Ironhold. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden glow over the hundreds of aristocrats, pack alphas, and military generals who had gathered for the royal tribunal. The air buzzed with nervous anticipation. Word of the White Wolf's return had spread across the continent like wildfire, bringing both fragile hope and deep terror to the ruling classes. As the heavy golden doors swung open, the royal herald's voice boomed over the crowd. "Presenting His Royal Majesty, King Lucius Vane, and Her Grace, Madeline Hayes, the Ethelgard of the North." A collective gasp rippled through the nobility as Madeline walked into the hall, her hand resting firmly on Lucius's arm. She radiated an aura of quiet, terrifying power. It was not the aggressive, domineering pressure of a standard alpha, but the deep, ancient pressure of the ocean floor. Calm, vast, and completely unbreakable. They ascended the dais, taking their seats on twin thrones of carved obsidian. Below them, bound in heavy iron chains, knelt Lord Branford and Lord Nathaniel Belmont, Katerina's disgraced father. "Nathaniel Belmont!" Lucius's voice cut through the silence, cold and unforgiving. "My inquisitors have spent the last 3 weeks tearing through your private estates. We found the ledgers. We found the encrypted missives paying the mercenary guilds for the massacre of the Ivory Moon. You slaughtered the House of Hayes to seize the silver mines of the valley, and you conspired to hide the survival of the Ethelgard bloodline. Nathaniel, a balding man with a pale, weasel-like face, spat blood onto the polished marble floor. She is a monster. The Ethelgards are too powerful. They unbalance the natural order. If she lives, the neighboring kingdoms will unite to destroy us out of sheer fear. Duke Harrison Monroe, a wealthy political rival of the king, stepped out from the crowd of nobles, clearing his throat. Your Majesty, Lord Belmont's methods were treasonous, but his fears are not entirely unfounded. To crown a white wolf is to invite war. Can this woman even control the beast within her? Or will she bring ruin to us all? The hall erupted into anxious, hissing murmurs. Lucius's jaw clenched, his hand moving toward the hilt of his sword. But Madeline gently placed her hand over his, stopping him. She stood up. The murmurs instantly died. Madeline slowly descended the steps of the dais, walking directly toward Duke Harrison Monroe. She did not break eye contact. As she moved, she allowed her tight leash on her inner wolf to slip. Just a fraction. The temperature in the grand hall plummeted. Thick frost began to spiderweb across the polished marble floor, radiating outward from Madeline's velvet slippers. The crystal chandeliers flickered as a visible wave of pure, luminescent silver magic rolled off her shoulders. Duke Harrison stumbled backward, his breath pluming in the suddenly freezing air, his knees shaking uncontrollably under the crushing weight of her presence. My family guarded the northern borders for 300 years, Duke Monroe, Madeline said, her voice echoing with a slight, otherworldly reverb. We did not unbalance the world. We protected it. Those who fear my power are only those who harbor shadows in their own hearts. She turned her blazing silver eyes to Nathaniel Belmont and the trembling Lord Branford. I hid in the ash and the dirt for 5 years. I starved, I bled, and I watched the men who murdered my mother parade around in silk and gold. I know the true measure of this kingdom's cruelty, and I know its strength. She walked back up the dais, standing beside Lucius, who watched her with an expression of absolute awestruck worship. I am Madeline Hayes, she declared, her voice ringing with absolute finality. I am the White Wolf, and I sentenced Nathaniel Belmont and Lord Branford to the traitor's block. The royal guards immediately seized the screaming men, dragging them forcefully from the hall. No one protested. No one dared. The entire court dropped to one knee, bowing their heads in unified, unquestioning submission to their new queen. Lucius reached out, taking Madeline's hand and pressing a fervent kiss to her knuckles. The darkness of her past was finally dead, replaced by the blazing dawn of her reign. The White Wolf had returned to the light, and beside her Alpha King, she would ruthlessly reshape the world. Did Madeline's fiery defiance and King Lucius's ruthless devotion leave you craving more of the White Wolf's incredible journey? This is just the beginning of their legendary saga. If you love this epic tale of hidden power, ancient magic, and fated mates, hit that like button. Share this video with your fellow fantasy romance fans, and subscribe to our channel now. Ring the notification bell so you never miss an update, and drop a comment below predicting what happens next.